Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my power rankings for the 2024 Formula E Diriyah ePrix. So starting out, number 22, driver who had a shocker of a weekend, and I think is unfortunately the start of a trend, and that is Porsche's Antonio Felix da Costa. So out-qualified and out-raced by his teammate Pascal Wehrlein, both races. Not really a whole much more to add, just really lacking in qualifying pace. I know these first three races, overtaking has been very difficult, which can kind of excuse the being unable to recover in the races, but still the qualifying performances have been very, very poor from da Costa, and unfortunately for these first three races, qualifying performance is very important. All right, number 21, Dan Ticktum. So for Dan Ticktum, another tough weekend, out-raced and out-qualified by his teammate both races. For Ticktum, his teammate got 2 points on the board in that first race, and for Ticktum, he was miles off the back the first race, and the second race he picked up damage on the opening corners, and basically his race was over from there. I think really the most surprising thing about Ticktum's start of the season for me is his lack of qualifying pace. Last year he out-qualified Seti Kamara by, I think, a margin of 2 to 1, I think. And his qualifying performances was, his strongest asset last year, and that's really been missing through these opening three races. So we'll see how the rest of the season goes for Ticktum, but of course, if he wants any hope of a promotion further up the grid, these results have not been helping him. All right, number 20, Jehan Daruvala. So for Daruvala, the first race was pretty tough, another really tough qualifying session, of course, learning a new circuit, but the second race was much more promising. He qualified, I think, P5, got himself up into the duels for the first time, so great job him there. And I think, of course, that's kind of the benefit of some of these doubleheader weekends, is that he has a second race to basically go right back out on track and qualify again on a track that he now knows. Unfortunately, the race pace was not really there. And he made a couple mistakes, and I know he had the brake failure at the end, but still, some of those moves were, or basically he let himself get overtaken. And I think the energy management is still a bit lacking, and his teammate Gunther has definitely showed him up these first three races. All right, number 19, Lucas di Grassi. So a driver who I think is underwhelmed quite a bit. I know he's in the app car, which is of course not expected to get particularly good results, but still for di Grassi, he's been out-qualified. He was out-qualified and out-raced at both races in Diriyah, and yeah, not really a whole much more to add given that we have so little coverage of that far back in the field. I think the only other thing I really know is that he ran out of energy, I think the first or second race, one of the two races, and was overtaken at the very end, I believe the second race. So yeah, number 19 for Lucas di Grassi. Number 18, Sebastian Buemi. So for Buemi, pretty tough weekend after a very good first race in Mexico City. The first race, I think, didn't really have the pace in qualifying, and of course, lack of overtaking meant that he couldn't really progress from there. But the second race, massive crash in qualifying. I don't think it was a mechanical issue based on his body language. I think he knew it was his mistake and he just completely misjudged that corner. Unfortunately, the damage was so big that he was unable to even start the ePrix, and who knows, maybe he could have picked up a couple points like Mitch Evans was able to from further back on the grid. But for Buemi, yeah, pretty torrid 2 races in Diriyah. Number 17, Nick de Vries. So for de Vries, he split qualifying with his teammate Mortar and lost both races. So for de Vries, bit of another tough weekend in Diriyah, or another tough weekend this season, this time in Diriyah. Qualifying, I think, was a bit better. The second race, he was, of course, out-qualified Mortar, finally out-qualified Mortar there. But I think the race pace is a bit lacking, and that's something that we've kind of always known about de Vries, is that the qualifying pace is generally much better than the race pace. That being said, compared to the rest of the drivers in the field, bar Daruvala, he has the least amount of experience with this Gen 3 car. So I am willing to give him a bit of slack early in the season to get up to speed with the new car, but still not really going to give him too much more. All right, number 16. Norman Nato. So for Nato, out-qualified and out-raced in both races by his teammate Jake Dennis. I know it's Jake Dennis, but still. I think he picked up some solid points that first race in Diriyah. I think 6 points, so 8 crucial points there. But qualifying, second race was pretty poor. Started very far down the field, and unfortunately, kind of the story that I've said multiple times already, wasn't able to make his way back to the field just because overtaking the spin so difficult. Number 15. Sasha Fenestras of Nissan. So for Fenestras, out-raced and out-qualified both races by Oliver Rowland. So for Fenestras, a bit of a tough weekend, I think, especially given the results that his teammate was able to extract from the car today. Of course, the first race was a bit of a write-off with the suspension failure pretty early on in the race. And today, in the second race today, he did get some solid points, but still a bit of a struggle. And of course, everything's in comparison to your teammate. And given that the Nissan-powered cars seem to be really much stronger this weekend, especially the second race, the fact was he was the third best Nissan-powered car in that second race. Number 14, Mitch Evans. So this is might be a bit of a surprise, but for Mitch Evans, he split qualifying with Cassidy and then was out-raced both times by his teammate. So for Evans, I think there's quite a bit to say there. Of course, he made quite a few mistakes that first race. Went way too deep into turn 18, I think, on three occasions in that race. Had a podium basically in the bag and then threw it away on the final lap trying to overtake Byrne. Of course, I think it's stung a bit that it was, of all drivers, it was his teammate Cassidy who took that podium. And then today, qualifying was a bit of a struggle. Qualified quite far down the order, was able to recover to a points finish, but of course was aided by Jake Dennis getting his 5-second penalty. So not a great weekend for Evans. I think this is unfortunately a trend for him the last couple of seasons where he's just had kind of slow starts to seasons. I don't know if it's the fact that these tracks just don't suit him, but this last year he had a bit of a slow start, and this year he's better start in comparison, but still slower, quite far behind his teammate Nick Cassidy. All right, number 13, Sam Bird. With Sam Bird, 1 week, 1 day, it'll be fantastic, and the next day it'll be pretty much a disaster. First race, out-qualified and out-raced his teammate Jake Hughes. Got himself a really solid P4, really 12 points on the board there. But then second race, of course, kind of had that botched overtake attempt on Fenestras, and then hit the wall and retired. So, basically the duality of Sam Bird right there in a nutshell. And I do think that without that mistake, even if he had just finished like 11th place or so, I think he would have been much higher. But I do generally punish mistakes pretty harshly, given that they are indeed mistakes. So I've put him down in 13th. All right, number 12. A driver who I think had a bit of a under the radar weekend, but I think a pretty solid weekend overall, was Nico Muller. Out-qualified and out-raced his teammates both times, and of course his teammate being Lucas di Grassi, one of the most experienced drivers, actually the most experienced driver in Formula E history. So another solid weekend for Muller. Of course, driving the apt points really aren't really on the board, but I do think they'll be a bit disappointed that their rivals ERT got 2 points this weekend. Number 11, kind of a similar situation to Muller, but I put Edo Mortara. Let's see, what did he do? He split qualifying with Debris and then out-raced him both races. And he was actually just outside the points both times. I think the second race he finished 12th, which in a Mahindra is honestly a pretty good result, and that's about the best you can expect. Similar story to Muller, probably a bit disappointed that Sergio Senicama was able to pick up 2 points, because that battle for 9th place is really going to be between those 3 teams. And given that we expect that the points hauls for those teams are going to be so low, every point is going to matter. So, moving into the top 10, I've gone with Stoffel Van Doren. So for Van Doren, he split qualifying and the race with his teammate, but I decided to put him a bit lower given that his highs were quite a bit lower than his teammate, and I feel like he didn't really get the most out of the car today. He of course made that mistake dropping a position, going through the attack mode and not arming attack mode. So yeah, that was a bit unfortunate there, but still not a terrible weekend all around for Van Doren. Number 9. Alright, splitting qualifying with their teammate and outracing them both times is Max Günther. So for Günther, pretty solid result, I think, in Diriyah, all things considered. That being said, he was never really the fastest driver with his powertrain. I think Verne was obviously much faster the first race, and then Van Doren, I think, was ahead of him the second race. But for Günther, the consistency is there, and that's honestly a really refreshing change for Günther, given that we've known for years that he has the speed to win races and potentially challenge for a championship. But the consistency has never really been there. He'll have a fantastic result one day, and then the next day he'll basically bin it in the wall, a bit like Sam Bird. But this weekend, or not this weekend, but this season so far, 3 points finishes, I believe, so that's a great start to the season for him. Alright, number 8. Pascal Wehrlein. So for Wehrlein, he outqualified and outraced his teammate DaCosta both times, and I would have put him higher, but I do feel like he didn't get the most out of the Porsche powertrain this weekend. Jake Dennis obviously had an absolutely amazing result that first race, and of course identical powertrain. So I do feel like there was a bit more on the table there for Wehrlein, but still 2 solid points finishes, not the high points finishes he would have hoped for, and of course he lost his championship lead to Nick Cassidy. Number 7. So for Hughes, he's qualifying and the race head-to-head with his teammate. Solid weekend overall, I thought. For a strong 4th place today, basically mirroring his teammate's result from the first race. But I think in the first race he wasn't really in a position to get points. I know he was in the points, I think, towards the end, and then just fell out of the points-paying positions at the end, I think, I assume with battery issues and battery management issues. But all in all, not a bad weekend for Hughes, and he's had a pretty solid start to the season. Number 6, Robin Frijns. So for Frijns, outraced and outqualified his teammate both races, but that first race was not particularly strong, and given how good that the other two Jaguars were, not the best result overall, but today was very good. Of course, qualified on the front row and then finished P2, which is his first podium in quite a long time. I believe first podium since season 8. Of course, he would have been hoping to get the win, but still, podium is a really solid start, and this kind of jump starts his season, as he only had 1 point from the opening 2 races. Number 5, on with Oliver Rowland. So for Rowland, he outqualified and outraced his teammate both times, Sasha Fenestraz. So that's a really good stat line there. And of course took pole, which I think was a big surprise. We know that Rowland is a very good qualifier. He was an excellent qualifier in his rookie season with Nissan. And this season we know that Nissan powertrains are pretty good over 1 lap. So maybe Rowland will be able to take advantage of that and grab a couple more pole positions this year. But of course, the efficiency wasn't really there, and that's something we kind of knew. It's unfortunate that he kind of botched the start for starting from pole, but still, I think he'll be really happy with podium. Alright, number 4, probably one of the best drivers from this weekend. That is Sergio Sette Câmara. He, of course, basically did a clean sweep of the qualifying and race head-to-head with his teammate Dan Ticktum. And of course started 4th the first race and then started 9th the second race, which in an ERT is definitely way better than you would normally expect. Of course, I knew that it was going to be pretty tight whether he would even get points that first race, given that we knew that the ERT is such a poor car in terms of energy efficiency. But he managed to make it last and came home with 2 really important points for the team. Alright, number 3. Jon-Eric Vergne. So, split qualifying in the race head-to-head with his teammate Van Doren, but like I kind of alluded to when I mentioned Van Doren, Jeb's highs were much higher than Van Doren's. So, of course, took pole in that first race and then brought it home in P2. Wasn't able to get the win, I don't think. I don't think he was really would have been able to, unless he absolutely maximized the attack mode strategy and was able to stay ahead of Dennis, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But still, I think he should be really happy with his result. The second race was a bit quieter, got out-qualified by Van Doren, of course, and then kind of, I think, finished 8th, I believe. So not a fantastic result, but still, I think overall he'll be very, very happy with this weekend. All right, number 2, Jake Dennis. Of course, you're a race winner from race 1, probably the second biggest winning margin in Formula E history. You know, almost pretty much an absolutely perfect race, except for getting the 3 points for pole. Second race was kind of a disaster, but you know, I think mitigating circumstances, of course, with Buemi crashing in qualifying, I kind of gave him a pass for the poor qualifying performance, and just making up positions in the race, I think, was kind of what the expectation was. He finished 10th on the road, but fortunately got a 5-second penalty. I'm not gonna criticize him too harshly for that, given that I think there was a number of drivers who all got a penalty for that. So yeah, not the biggest deal. And I think, you know, really 1 point versus 0 points. Of course, it could be really important at the end of the season, but the important thing is that the pace was there, and he was able to make some good moves in the race. All right, number 1, probably the star of the weekend, your new championship leader, Nick Cassidy, number 1. He split qualifying, but swept the race head-to-head with his teammate Mitch Evans, which is definitely not the easiest thing to do. I think he'll be really thrilled with how his Formula E season started. 3 podiums in a row, 2 third places, and of course the win today. So he now sits on top with I believe 17 point cushion, or no, maybe it's a 19-point cushion to Pascal Wehrlein. Of course, that can evaporate very easily with one bad race, but still, it's definitely a good sign for Cassidy, and he's really carrying over his momentum from last year, where he showed how strong he could be. So I think for Cassidy, he's just going to be looking to minimize the kind of off weekends, the weekends where you have score very few points, and he'll be in great shape for winning the championship this year. So that's my power rankings for the Diriyah ePrix. Of course, we have a pretty long 7-week gap until the next race in Sao Paulo, which I believe is March 16th. I'm probably not going to be doing any specific Formula E videos, but I will mention Formula E news in my news videos that I do. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.